Welcome to the History and Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one.
In movies, Wild West brothels seem synonymous with romance and fun. Reality was very different. Women trafficked with false promises, endless debts, epidemics of smallpox and syphilis, abortions in filthy rooms, and behind it all, entire towns sustained by prostitution. We will tell 15 facts about Wild West brothels found in official records. Some will surprise you. Number 1, some red light districts were so large and organized that they functioned as neighborhoods specialized in entertainment. An entire street dedicated to sin, brothels side by side, each with its red light on, saloons between them, gambling houses, opium dens, doctors who treated only venereal diseases, shops selling provocative clothing, jewelers accepting gold as payment, photographers specializing in portraits of prostitutes. It was not chaos, it was community. In the Wild West, red light districts functioned as complete neighborhoods, with their own economy and their own rules. Storyville, in New Orleans, had 38 blocks dedicated exclusively to prostitution. But in the West, the configurations were different. Smaller, more concentrated, more integrated into city life. In many boomtowns, the district was on a single street, sometimes two. But on that street, everything revolved around the business. Established women knew each other. They shared information about dangerous clients. They lent money in emergencies. They took care of one another when they got sick. Some madams adopted younger prostitutes, teaching them the trade, not out of kindness, out of pragmatism. A well-trained girl was worth more. Regular clients also formed bonds. Some men visited the same prostitute for years. They paid for time and companionship. They talked, drank, played cards. It was socialization. Loneliness killed as much as disease. These districts had closed economies. Money circulated within the neighborhood. Prostitutes spent their earnings at local establishments. Saloons sold to brothels. Doctors treated only that circuit. Some districts even had unofficial rules, operating hours, minimum prices, codes of conduct. It was not total anarchy. It was an organized community with its own norms. And when reformers tried to shut down these districts, they encountered resistance not only from prostitutes, but from the entire economic network that depended on them. The butcher who sold meat to the brothels, the doctor who treated the girls, the jeweler who bought gold from clients, the photographer who took the portraits. They were complete ecosystems. Closing a brothel was easy. Destroying an entire neighborhood? Impossible. Number 2, between 1865 and 1869, entire cities of brothels traveled on rails following the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Between 1865 and 1869, an entire city moved on rails. It followed the construction of the Union Pacific Transcontinental Railroad, mile by mile. They called it Hell on Wheels. The system worked like this. Brothels, saloons, and casinos were set up in tents and light wooden structures. When construction advanced to the next point, everything was dismantled, loaded onto flatbed rail cars, and set up again 12 to 19 miles ahead. The first Hell on Wheels city was at Fort Kearny, Nebraska, in August 1866. Then came North Platte, Julesburg, Cheyenne, Laramie, Green River City, Benton, and Bear River City. Some became permanent, like Cheyenne and Laramie. Most lasted only 1 or 2 months, 1,000 to 2,000 men. Only 12 to 24 women per camp. The most famous structure was the Big Tent. More than 98 feet long, it functioned as a bar, dance hall, gambling house, brothel, and venereal disease clinic, all in one place. The prostitutes traveled under brutal conditions. Rail cars shaking on poorly finished tracks. Dust, extreme heat in summer, freezing cold in winter. But the profit made it worthwhile. With so few women and thousands of railroad workers earning wages, the mobile brothels made fortunes. They charged between $5 and $20 per service, when an average worker earned about $30 per month. Violence was constant. Fights, shootouts, murders. Hell on Wheels cities were considered the most dangerous places in America. Law enforcement practically did not exist. The system ended in May 1869 when the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroads met at Promontory Summit, Utah. The last tents were dismantled. Some prostitutes settled in the cities that had become permanent. Others moved on to new boomtowns. But for 4 years, an entire brothel traveled on rails. A mobile city of vice following progress. Number 3. In some frontier towns, prostitutes made up as much as 25% of the female population, surpassing respectable women. In some frontier towns of the Wild West, prostitutes represented up to 25% of the entire female population. In absolute numbers, they greatly outnumbered respectable women. This created a market completely dominated by brothels. Deadwood, South Dakota, in 1876, had an astonishing proportion. 90% of the women in the town were prostitutes. Only 10% were wives, mothers, teachers, or shopkeepers. San Francisco, 1850, had only 8% female population, and most were prostitutes. The male-to-female ratio reached 50-1 in some mining areas. Virginia City, during the peak of the Comstock Lode in the 1860s, had thousands of men and only hundreds of women, most working in brothels. This imbalance created a unique social dynamic. Prostitutes were not marginalized in the same way as in the East. They were necessary, visible, sometimes even respected by parts of the community. In towns where they were the majority, they had bargaining power. They could choose clients, set prices. Some became well-known public figures. The market belonged to them. With so many men and so few women, any female presence had value. That did not mean an easy life. Violence, disease, addiction, and early death were common. But it meant that prostitution was the dominant female industry. Brothels shaped the local economy. In some towns, they were the establishments that employed the most women, more than laundries, boarding houses, or shops. And as towns grew and became civilized, the proportion changed. Families arrived. Respectable women settled. Moral reform movements gained strength. And slowly, prostitutes ceased to be the majority. But in the chaotic early years of any boomtown, it was they who dominated. Number 4. In Deadwood, 1876, sexual services were paid with gold dust, while epidemics of smallpox and venereal disease devastated prostitutes. July 1876. The first prostitutes arrived in Deadwood in the same wagon as Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane. 1 month later in August, a smallpox epidemic swept through the town. Deadwood was only 1 year old, but it was already hell on earth. 90% of the women were prostitutes. There was no sanitation, there was no proper hospital. Venereal diseases were rampant. Syphilis, gonorrhea, no effective treatment, no prevention. Many women served 10, 15, 20 men per day. The math was brutal. The more clients, the greater the chance of infection. And once infected, she infected everyone else. An endless cycle. Abortions were performed without sterilization, often in filthy rooms, with improvised instruments. Many died from hemorrhage or infection. Those who survived carried consequences for the rest of their lives. Laudanum, opium, morphine, easily accessible and lethal drugs. When the pain became unbearable, when disease consumed the body, when there was no more hope, many chose poison. Dr. F.S. Howe, the local physician, carried a stomach pump for emergencies. Overdoses were so frequent that he had to be constantly prepared. The average was 1 murder per day in Deadwood's first year. Prostitutes were frequent victims. Drunk clients, fights over money, sexual violence that ended in death. The town was illegal, built on Lakota territory. There was no government. There was no real law, only vigilantes and improvised sheriffs. For Deadwood's prostitutes, every day was survival. Payment in gold dust was worth it when you were unlikely to live very long anyway. It was live fast, earn what you could and hope not to be next. Number 5. In Tombstone, the Birdcage Theater hid 14 prostitution rooms hanging from the ceiling, operating 24 hours a day. December the 26th, 1881. The Birdcage Theater opened its doors in Tombstone, Arizona. The owners, William and Lottie Hutchinson, initially tried to make it a respectable family theater. It failed within weeks. They then transformed it into a theater, saloon, casino, and brothel operating simultaneously, 24 hours a day. The innovation was the 14 bird cages, suspended from the ceiling with red velvet curtains, private booths where prostitutes worked, $25 per night. You could watch the stage, drink, gamble, and purchase sexual services without leaving your seat. In the basement, there were even more expensive private rooms, $40 for 24 hours, for clients who wanted more privacy and time. The stage had continuous shows, dancers, singers, comedians, but few paid much attention. The real entertainment was in the cages and the basement. The Birdcage hosted the longest poker game in recorded history, 8 uninterrupted years. The table never closed. Players came and went, but the game continued. 26 deaths occurred on site during its operation. Shootouts over cheating, fights over prostitutes, settling of scores. The walls still have more than 140 bullet holes today. The New York Times called it the wildest, wickedest night spot in the West. It operated continuously until the early 1890s, when the collapse of the silver mines destroyed Tombstone's economy. It was reopened as a museum in 1934, everything preserved exactly as it was. The cages still hang from the ceiling. The basement rooms retain their original beds. It is one of the few Wild West brothels to survive intact. A time capsule showing how sex, violence, and entertainment mixed without any pretense of respectability. Number 6. For many prostitutes, marriage was not romance. It was a survival strategy and an exit from the brothel. For many Wild West prostitutes, marriage was not romance. It was a survival strategy, a way out of the brothel, a chance at respectability, or simply the best economic option available. Some clients fell in love. They returned week after week to see the same woman. They paid for time, conversation, companionship. Eventually, they proposed marriage. For the prostitute, it was a calculated decision. Did he have money, property? Was he violent? Did he drink too much? Did he gamble? She weighed the risks. Marriage to a violent and poor man could be worse than the brothel. But marriage to a successful miner or established merchant meant security. Other marriages were purely transactional. Older prostitutes, who could no longer compete with younger women, actively sought husbands. Lonely workers, especially immigrants, looked for wives. The past did not matter. What mattered was having someone to cook, clean, and care. In return, she had a home and protection. Some frontier towns had such a shortage of women that prostitutes married quickly. Men had no choice. It was marry a prostitute or remain alone. And loneliness killed as much as disease. Some madams even arranged marriages for their employees, as a reward for years of service or to get rid of women who no longer produced. They connected them with clients looking for wives. They received a fee for the arrangement. Not all marriages ended well. Some husbands discovered they could not forget their wife's past. Domestic violence was common. Other husbands used their wives as income, forcing them to continue in prostitution. But for many, even a difficult marriage was better than dying of syphilis in a crib. It was pragmatism, survival, using the few cards they had in hand. Number 7. Chinese women were trafficked to San Francisco with false promises of work, kept imprisoned under fabricated debts. An elderly woman visited the young Zheng Guiying in Hong Kong. She worked for Wang Duck, a wealthy merchant in San Francisco. The proposal was simple. Come to America, get a good job, maybe even marry a prosperous Chinese merchant. Guiying's family was very poor. There was no work in China. She thought it would be an opportunity to help her family. She agreed. She arrived in San Francisco. She discovered there was no job, only a brothel, and a debt she could never repay. Between 1852 and 1873, the Hip Yi Tong, one of the Chinese secret societies that controlled Chinatown, trafficked 6,000 women to San Francisco. It earned $200,000. The system worked like this. Recruiters traveled through villages in China. They promised well-paid domestic work in the United States. They promised marriage to wealthy merchants. Some girls were sold by their own families. In China, daughters could not carry the ancestral surname and could not do heavy labor. When famine came, they were the first to be sold. They cost between $50 and $300 in China. In San Francisco, they were sold at auction for up to $2,800. 14-year-old girls fetched the highest prices. Upon arrival, they were forced to sign contracts they did not understand. 4 to 6 years of work as prostitutes to pay the debt of passage, but the debt never ended. They charged for food, clothing, room, medicine, protection. The debt only grew. If they tried to escape, bounty hunters easily found them. If captured, torture and death awaited them. The Tongs controlled everything. White police officers received bribes. 25% of auction profits went to the police. Life expectancy was 5 years. Guiying survived. Her testimony in 1934 helped dismantle one of the largest human trafficking networks in San Francisco. Number 8. In 1903, authorities tried to regulate the appearance of prostitutes by requiring long clothing and closed blinds, but they resisted. In 1903, authorities in several Western cities decided that prostitution would be more acceptable if prostitutes looked less like prostitutes. They passed absurd regulations trying to control appearance. Dresses had to be longer, covering the ankles. Blouses had to have high collars. Blinds had to remain closed during the day. Makeup had to be discreet. Hair tied up, not loose. The logic was hypocritical. Allow the business, but hide its visual evidence. Prostitutes were outraged. Their work depended on being seen. Provocative clothing attracted clients. Open windows showed they were working. In Butte, Montana, they organized a protest. They cut holes in the blinds and stuck their faces through them. Then they cut doors and windows in the backs of the cribs, creating Pleasant Alley, a maze where they could continue displaying themselves away from main streets. Others creatively circumvented the rules. They wore long dresses on the street, but removed them immediately upon entering. They installed translucent red curtains that technically covered the windows, but still allowed visibility. Some painted symbols and numbers on the blinds, indicating prices and services. Authorities did not know what to do. Fine them? They already collected monthly fines for prostitution itself. Arrest them? They lacked jail space and real desire. Close the brothels? They would lose revenue. So they looked the other way. They passed regulations to satisfy moral reformers, but did not enforce them seriously. It was theater. Everyone knew nothing would change. Prostitutes learned to play the game, respectable appearance on the surface, business as usual behind the scenes, and the hypocrisy continued, cities profiting from prostitution while pretending to regulate morality. Number 9. Eleanor Dumont traveled the West building an empire of saloons and brothels, proving women could be successful entrepreneurs. Eleanor Dumont arrived in California in 1854. She was 20 years old. She was French, beautiful, and possessed a rare talent. She could deal cards professionally. She opened her first gambling saloon in Nevada City, offering something unheard of: a respectable woman as a dealer. Men traveled miles to see her. They paid dearly just to sit at her table. Within a year, she was rich. But Eleanor was ambitious. She did not want just one saloon. She wanted an empire. She traveled through California, Oregon, Nevada, Montana, opening establishments in every boomtown. Some were only gambling houses. Others included brothels. She hired, trained, and managed the women. She controlled the books, negotiated with suppliers, bribed authorities when necessary. She was an entrepreneur in the fullest sense. Her houses had a reputation for cleanliness and honesty. No cheating at the tables, no tolerated violence, quality drinks, healthy, well-treated women. Clients paid a premium for this. Eleanor understood something many madams ignored. Reputation was an asset. Trust generated loyal customers, and loyal customers spent more. By the 1860s, she was one of the richest women in the West. She owned properties in multiple cities, invested in mining, lent money at interest. But the nickname came by accident. As she aged, dark fuzz grew on her upper lip. Clients began calling her Madame Moustache. She hated it, but the name stuck. In the 1870s, her luck changed. Bad investments, partners who robbed her, gambling addiction, the same thing that had made her rich now destroyed her. In 1879, she was found dead in Bodie, California. Morphine overdose. She was 45 years old. She was bankrupt. But for 2 decades, Eleanor Dumont proved a woman could build an empire in the wildest West. She was not a victim. She was an entrepreneur. Number 10. Butte, Montana, had Venus Alley, a maze of cribs marked by red lights that operated for more than a century. Butte, Montana, had the largest and most open red light district in the West. For more than a century, from 1860 to 1982, brothels operated continuously. The heart was Venus Alley, formerly Pleasant Alley, a maze of cribs marked by red lights. The configuration was unique. Tiny cribs, some with only about 22 square feet, lined up in narrow alleys. Each had a door in front and another in back, windows with red blinds, red lights above the doors indicating they were open for business. During the day, prostitutes sat in the windows. They tapped on the glass to attract clients. At night, the red lights made the alleys glow. The cribs were primitive: a bed, a basin, maybe a chair. No adequate heating, no ventilation. They smelled of cheap disinfectant and sweat. But they worked. Volume compensated for lack of comfort. A prostitute could serve 15-20 clients per night, $5 or $10 each. When the city ordered that prostitutes could not solicit on public streets, they cut doors in the backs of the cribs. They created internal corridors connecting everything. Pleasant Alley became a labyrinth. You could enter on one street and exit on another without being seen. Perfect for clients seeking discretion, or for prostitutes fleeing dangerous customers. Police tried to maintain control, but it was impossible. Too many doors, too many corridors, too many alleys. Venus Alley had a life of its own rules, its own economy. When reformers finally managed to close most of the cribs in 1954, many were demolished, but some survived. The Dumas brothel, one of the largest, operated until 1982. It was Butte's last legal brothel. Today it is a museum. Orange carpet from the 1960s, a payphone, red details. Preserved exactly as it was. Venus Alley no longer exists. But for decades it was the perfect symbol of Western hypocrisy. Everyone knew. Everyone used it. No one admitted it. Number 11. Beneath the streets of Pendleton, Oregon, a vast network of connected basements housed brothels, opium dens, and escape routes during police raids. Imagine being able to disappear. 1 second, you're in a saloon drinking whiskey. The next, police break down the door. You go down to the basement, cross passages under the sidewalk, and emerge 3 blocks away. Invisible. In Pendleton, Oregon, this was not fantasy. It was survival. In 1908, this town of only 3,000 inhabitants had 32 saloons and 18 brothels. It was the wildest place in eastern Oregon. The configuration was perfect. Saloon on the ground floor, card room in the basement, brothel on the second floor. In the 1870s and 1880s, when commercial buildings were constructed, each received a stone basement. Chinese workers helped with the foundations. Later, when sidewalks were installed, someone had the idea to dig passages connecting the basements. Beneath 16 blocks, passages connected everything. Merchants transported goods without being robbed. Brothel owners offered discreet access. And when the law arrived, there was always a back exit. The Chinese community, brutally discriminated against, maintained businesses in the basements. At Hop Sing's Laundry, cowboys paid 10 cents for a bath in clean water. 5 if they reused dirty water. Hop Sing ironed clothes by spitting water on them because he had no sprayer. When they came out cleaned, they climbed internal stairs directly to the brothels, without appearing on the street. In 1915, Prohibition arrived. The 32 saloons officially closed. In the basements, whiskey kept flowing, bootleggers moved barrels, gamblers fled raids, prostitutes escaped violent clients. One passage led to the Empire Ice Cream Parlor, another to the Shamrock Saloon. The Cozy Room's brothel had hiding places in the walls. If you knew the system, you could cross the entire downtown without stepping on the street. A parallel world about 10 feet below. In the 1980s, sinkholes swallowed asphalt. They investigated. They found a preserved ghost city. Today, it is a tourist attraction. But between 1880 and 1950, it was necessity. The last madam, Stella Darby, closed the Cozy Rooms in 1965. Nearly 100 years of buried secrets. Number 12. Wild West brothels were social centers where men drank, gambled, conducted business, and obtained valuable information. Wild West brothels were not just places for intimacy, they were complete social centers. Men went to drink, gamble, talk, do business, and obtain information. Intimacy was only part of the equation. Many brothels had large halls on the ground floor, poker and blackjack tables, well-stocked bars, pianos, sometimes small stages for entertainment. Men spent hours there before going upstairs. They played cards, drank whiskey, talked. They shared information about mines, trails, and job opportunities. Have you heard about a new discovery near Virginia City? The Southern Trail is blocked by snow. They are hiring on the railroad. Information circulated quickly. Prostitutes and madams were also sources. They served miners, merchants, politicians, criminals. They overheard conversations. They knew secrets. They knew who was making money, who was broke, who planned what. That information had value. Some men paid just to talk with well-connected madams. In small towns, the local brothel was practically a social club, especially in winter when there was little else to do. Men went to warm up, socialize, feel female presence even without hiring intimate companionship. Some prostitutes developed long-term relationships with regular clients. Not necessarily romantic, but genuine. He shared problems, she listened, he asked advice, she gave it. He needed money borrowed, she lent it. It functioned almost like paid friendship. Brothels were also spaces of relative racial equality. White, black, Mexican, Chinese, native, all mixed. Prejudice existed, of course, but money spoke louder. If you paid, you were served. Finally, they were places of emotional relief. Men living alone under brutal conditions needed an outlet, not only physical, but human. Talking to someone, laughing, feeling a gentle touch. Brothels provided that. It was business, but it was also a basic human need. Number 13. During the gold and silver rushes, a brothel in the West was more improvisation than luxury. Many operated in canvas tents. The romantic image of Wild West brothels shows luxurious parlors with velvet curtains, crystal chandeliers, and women in expensive dresses. Reality was very different. During the gold and silver rushes, most brothels operated in canvas tents attached to saloons. In 1848, when the California Gold Rush began, the population exploded from 800 to 100,000 people in less than a year. Towns could not keep up. Permanent construction took time, so tents were erected. Virginia City, Nevada, in 1859, had brothels in tents operating illegally but tolerated by authorities. Independent prostitutes moved from camp to camp with their own tents. They set up in one place, stayed a few weeks or months, dismantled, and moved to the next boom. Conditions were terrible. No heating in winter, suffocating heat in summer, no privacy. Canvas walls did not block sound. Everyone heard everything. Rain turned the ground into mud. Wind knocked structures down, but it was fast and cheap. A prostitute could set up her business in a matter of hours. Prices varied wildly. 25 cents was the minimum. $50 in areas where gold was abundant and women were scarce. Often, payment was made directly in gold dust weighed on the spot. Some tents had only a cot and a basin. Others attempted some decoration, cheap curtains, stolen rugs, cracked mirrors. As towns became established, tent brothels gave way to wooden structures. But in the first months of any rush, it was all canvas and improvisation. More sophisticated brothels came later when there was money and time. In the beginning, it was basic survival. Prostitution operated wherever there was demand, and demand was always there. Number 14. Brothels in Idaho helped finance the movement for women's suffrage, a connection later censored from official history. Idaho granted women the right to vote in 1896. It was the fourth state to do so. The suffrage movement was strong, but there were unexpected allies, madams and prostitutes. Brothels financially contributed to women's suffrage campaigns, not out of idealism, but self-interest. If women could vote, they would have political voice. They could influence laws, elect more tolerant sheriffs and judges, block radical moral reformers. It was a survival strategy. Suffragists knew this. Some accepted the money discreetly, others refused, fearing to stain the cause. But the money flowed anyway, through intermediaries, anonymous donations, indirect contributions. When Idaho approved suffrage, there was celebration, but also immediate historical censorship. Movement leaders began erasing any connection with prostitution. Records were lost. Names were removed from donor lists. Stories were rewritten. The official narrative became suffrage was the achievement of respectable, religious, morally superior women. Prostitutes? They never existed in history. The censorship was no accident. Suffragists knew that association with prostitution would give ammunition to opponents. You want immoral women to vote would be a devastating argument. So they erased it, rewrote it, lied by omission. The same happened in other states. Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, all had connections with brothel economies that were later hidden. Prostitution money helped finance movements that later betrayed them. It is ironic. Women who lived outside moral standards helped secure rights for all women. But when victory came, they were erased from history, their contributions denied, their names forgotten. Today, when we celebrate women's suffrage, we rarely mention that brothels helped pay the bill. It is part of history we prefer not to tell. But it happened, and it deserves to be remembered. Number 15. In Western towns, prostitution fines funded police, streets, and public services, while authorities preached morality. In 1883, Frisco, Colorado, ordered the sheriff to collect $5 monthly from all prostitutes. The money was applied directly to his salary. Total collected, $9. The law officer was paid with money from the women he was supposed to arrest. But the town boasted there were no undesirables. The hypocrisy was perfect. Helena, Montana, in the 1890s, 8 prostitutes owned properties valued at $3.5 million in today's money. Only railroads and a few businessmen contributed more in taxes. Breckenridge banned prostitution in 1890. Fine, $5 to $200. It continued. The fines continued. Municipal coffers remained full. Silverton kept coffers full with prostitution fines. During the 1918 influenza pandemic, these women became nurses. They saved lives. When the crisis passed, they went back to being fined. Butte had the largest red light district in Montana. Prostitutes paid rent and fines voluntarily. When the city ordered long dresses and closed curtains, they organized a protest. They banged on windows in solidarity. The city banned public solicitation. They cut doors in the back, creating Pleasant Alley. The pattern was the same in nearly all mining towns. Prostitution contributed through licenses, fees, and fines. Many districts became social centers. Meanwhile, politicians delivered speeches about good morals. Pastors preached against sin. Newspapers condemned immorality. But when it came time to pay police, repair streets, light public lamps, no one asked where the money came from. Everyone knew, no one spoke. For more than a century, these women survived changes and reforms. Fines fattened coffers. Businesses depended on their patronage. The last line of Frisco's records summed it all up. There were no undesirables in the town. Meanwhile, the policeman collected his salary,